Hello, everybody, and welcome to Breakfast All Day. I'm Alonso. Matt and Christy are joining me, and this was one of those movies that was intended to go into theaters, but it has instead made its debut on streaming platforms, and that would be Judd Apatow's latest, The King of Staten Island.
Speaking of movies you should probably see on the big screen, this was shot by Robert Elswit. You know who that is?
Yes.
Yes. Matt's shaking his head at me. No, Matt, I'm saying it to Matt because Matt's looking at me. Oh. He's Paul Thomas Anderson's frequent DP. He shot There Will Be Blood, Oscar winner for There Will Be Blood.
And several of George Clooney's films, I believe, including Good Night and Good Luck.
There you go. So, and I think
kind
it does.
Of a lack of milkshakes in this movie.
No milkshakes. There's a lot of pot, though. An awful lot of pot. But there definitely is a different vibe to the way this film was shot compared to other Judd Apatow movies. And I think that the collaboration with Robert Elswit has a lot to do with that. So Pete Davidson stars as a sort of semi-autobiographical figure. He plays a guy living in Staten Island. He's 24 years old, still lives at home with his mom, played by Marisa Tomei. His father was a firefighter who died in the line of duty. He died during a hotel fire when he was just a little boy. And Staten Island is an insular place. And so his father is kind of legendary for his heroism. But he's stuck, like so many Judd Apatow characters. He is trapped in a state of arrested development and sort of neurotic, hyperverbal paralysis. You know, he just cannot change his life at all. His younger sister, played by Maude Apatow, who is Judd's daughter, who is also in a lot of their movies. This is 40, I want to say, Funny People. She was really good in Other People. She's off to college. She's graduated from high school. She's going off to college. She's younger and has her shit together, has her life ahead of her. And increasingly, it's clear that, you know, Pete Davidson's character, whose name is Scott. Is it Scott?
Scott
needs to get out of the house and get a life and get a job and not just smoke pot and hang out with his buddies all day. A couple things become the catalyst for him to do that. One of which is his mom starts dating someone who happens to be a firefighter played by Bill Burr. And Bill Burr is maybe my favorite thing in this whole movie. His performance is maybe like one of the best parts of this whole movie, partly because he's known mostly for comedy, you know, but increasingly he is doing more and more drama. And he and Marisa Tomei have this really lovely chemistry with each other. And then Pete Davidson's character has to start hanging out with Bill Burr's kids. There are things that force him out of the morass, like the safety and comfort of his lack of ambition. And it's a much more mature version of the kind of Judd Apatow movie that might sound familiar as. I mean, so many of his characters, you know, are quick-witted, hyperverbal stoners who just can't get their shit together, but they're adorable nonetheless. This feels like a more mature, emotionally version of that kind of story. And, you know, it has, Pete Davidson co-wrote the script. It has some parallels for him. His father, it's very well known, his dad died on 9/11. He was a firefighter and he died in the line of duty as well. And we have seen him through Saturday Night Live and just through his public persona kind of work through a lot of the mental illness he has, you know, talked about and suffered with and been very candid about. This feels like a continuation of that, which makes this material kind of connect in a more visceral way, I would say, than a lot of Judd Apatow movies. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes long, like all Judd Apatow movies tend to be. You know, there's still there's not any restraint in that regard. But I do get the sense that this is more tightly scripted and structured than a lot of his films, and a lot of that has to do with the way it's shot. It's not just like people riffing and the camera sits there. Elswit's camera is kind of creating a feeling of restlessness along with the characters. So I think this is one of his best.
I disagree.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah, I like this movie a lot, much more than I guess we're going to hear from Alonso. You know, knowing that this is loosely based on Pete Davidson's life and somewhat, as both he and Apatow talked about, this is somewhat a perception of where Davidson might have ended up if he hadn't discovered comedy. You know, this is a guy, and I'm fascinated to watch this because we just watched that other movie with Pete Davidson,
Right, where he's also basically playing himself.
Where he's basically playing himself, and I'm blanking on the name of that.
Big Time Adolescence.
Big Time Adolescence. Right. This movie, I think, does a better job of showing that, to a certain extent, the worst thing that Scott and probably also Davidson has going for him is this amazing charm. Like, Scott could talk the birds out of the trees, right? But it doesn't actually serve him, because then he doesn't have to take any responsibility for anything and kind of talk his way out of anything. And so he just hangs with these stoners all day. And you see like how twisted up he is, having lost his dad. And he's never gotten past that. And he's kind of never been forced to. And I think part of it is, you've seen this guy, he's probably charmed his way out of having to make the hard decisions. He's dropped out of school. His mom's taking care of him. And things finally come to a head where she kicks him out, which the scene where he tries to go back at some point is hilarious, because she's kind of just, had a few glasses of wine and just laughs. Yeah, I really like this movie. I think it is overlong. I think this movie handles its tonal shifts fairly well, and I think the supporting cast is really good here. Buscemi's always great, and I really like Bel Powley in this.
Yes,
she's great,
and I like that Bel Powley is not there to fix him,
or to be the girl, right?
Or
she's
to be
more
the
than
girl.
that.
Like, she's kind of just using him, which is.
No, I think she's there to represent that this guy is capable of being loved. It's a question of whether or not he's willing to accept that that someone would love him, And so, yeah, she's in this position where, like, she's into him, but his self-esteem is so minimal, and he's so generally like shut off from the adult world that he can't even take that in, and so he self-sabotages the relationship. And so it's not that she's like this doormat by any means. She very much like kicks him out when it's clear that, like, he's just trying to use her at some point, like, for a place to stay. But at the same time, she allows us to know that this guy does have something in him that somebody else would find lovable.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think she's great. I mean, I don't hate this movie. I want to be clear. Like, I just, y'all are, I think, being a little too generous with it. I think we haven't seen an Apatow movie in 5 years. But it's some of the stuff that he does really well is here. You're right. The deep bench of character actors, Moises Arias, people like that, are a lot of fun to watch. Bill Burr's really good. Bel Powley is terrific. Buscemi is great. Also playing a fireman, which he used to be before becoming an actor. But yeah, the overlongness of it, and I can't believe he's going back to the man-child well, even with somebody for whom it is autobiographical. It's like, I feel like I've seen this very Judd Apatow movie so many times, and there was a time that I really loved it. I think Knocked Up is real. I mean, I haven't revisited these movies in a long time, but when I first saw them, I loved Knocked Up. I loved 40-Year-Old Virgin. 7-Year Engagement, which I think he produced, was a movie that people don't talk about enough that I liked a lot. But to me, this one, just like, I felt the length of it, and I felt the Pete Davidson of it, not in the good way, but in the, like, you're just sort of doing your own thing, and in a way that and there were times that it bugged me in a way that something like not Peanut Butter Falcon, what's the other Shia LaBeouf movie from last year that was about his
Honey Boy.
In the way that Honey Boy at least felt like he was sort of, that he had something to say about this period of life. That, I don't know, to me this just kind of felt like I'd seen or heard this all before from Pete Davidson. I wasn't learning anything, getting any greater insight into his background. So I don't know. There were discrete elements of it that I liked, particularly the performances. But as on the whole, by the end of it, I was just kind of like,
oh, see,
5-year engagement.
Again from Judd Apatow.
It's the 5-year engagement.
5-year engagement.
But it just felt like 7 because it's over 2 hours. Because it's over 2 hours long.
I like that one.
Nicholas Stoller directed that.
Yes.
He was a producer on it.
Yeah, I disagree with you on this. I mean, yes, we've seen the kind of like man-child, like get over, like you need to be more mature. This is the first time that I feel like Apatow's tackled a character that Arrested Development is valid,
tragedy based
and tragedy based, and has a reality that you can come into it realizing like, oh, okay, right? I mean, like you watch Knocked Up or 40-Year-Old Version, and it's like, these guys are just clowns, right? I mean, you don't, but Scott in this, like, has gone through some deep trauma over and above, you know, his ADHD and some other issues that he's got in his life. So this one, I think it's more of an, you know, I found this to be a more grounded exploration of that type, you know, of a person who really has kind of taken their childhood and kind of adolescence way too far.
Right. But it might be the fact that because this character has a more specific pathology than we're used to seeing, that I was expecting it to be then maybe a somewhat richer experience. And I think it's maybe too much like the other Apatow movies where, yeah, they are just kind of like, you know, dim bulbs who need to get their act together. Whereas this guy who's bringing more to the table and maybe some more, you know, reasons behind why he is the way he is, it still kind of comes off as this sort of like, you know, you just have to like the love of a good woman and taking on adult responsibilities will fix you. I don't know. I mean, it's worth seeing for the things in it that work, but I feel like I am less enamored of what Apatow does as a filmmaker with this movie more than ever before. And I don't know if that's just from repetition or specific things about this one that rubbed me the wrong way.
The scene where they're at the baseball game, where Bill Burr takes him to the Staten Island Yankees game and all
That's
the other firefighters are there, has a rawness that, and like a truth of emotion that cuts through the ha he's an adorable fuck up that is often so prevalent in Judd Apatow films.
That shows the character adolescent in the worst way.
Yeah. And I feel like he with Trainwreck a few years back, which he developed with Amy Schumer, which is also kind of partly autobiographical, which is also a little more mature look at somebody in Arrested Development who learns to get her shit together. Like that felt like a stepping stone to this. And maybe he is sort of in the same wheelhouse. I'm going to mix my metaphors here. It's going to be painful, but maybe this is his comfort zone, you know, but this is a good version of him being in that comfort zone, a smarter and more meaty version. And I mean, has he done movies that are beyond this realm? I mean, I guess this is 40 and Funny People, but Funny People is also about somebody who is sort of like stuck.
Yeah, all of these movies sort of feel like people who are either like emotionally constipated or are not where they should be in their lives at, you know, given their chronological age. I don't know.
I mean, shit, Apatow hangs out with comics. Like, that's what
there are a lot of comics and tiny roles here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and for the last 5 years, he's been doing a lot of TV stuff. He's been developing like, you know, the Crashing and Love and all these sort of like television-based comedy things. I don't know. I feel like there are certain directors where they have a brand and a stamp and an area of interest, and then after a while you're like, is this really all you've got? You know, I mean, we've talked about like Kevin Smith as being somebody who sort of paved the way for the kind of hyperverbal, obscene but intelligent characters, you know, profane but intelligent characters that Apatow would create, and I think he sort of hit the bottom of that well, and sometimes I feel that way with Apatow as well. I don't know. I mean, we just talked about The Five Bloods, and I think Spike Lee is constantly defying genre things, defying sort of the labels of what you think a Spike Lee joint is going to be. And other times, you know, I feel like you tell me the Judd Apatow directed this movie, I already know about 8 things about it, you know.
I suspect too, like, as you would say, your mileage may vary depending on your enjoyment of Pete Davidson.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think the fact that this hews kind of closely to parts of his life makes it extra resonant, extra poignant. But I can see how others who maybe are not fans of his particular brand of like kind of twitchy, squirrely humor might think like, ugh, I don't care.
Do we think that Pete Davidson has a future as an actor? Because the 2 feature films that we've seen him in this year, he's playing versions of his own life, which is hard to do in and of itself. Sure. Don't get me wrong, but like, does he strike you as somebody who even has an interest in like playing a role that has nothing to do with him, or is this just sort of like some interesting side projects from somebody who's pretty much going to pursue like sketch and stand up?
I think his willingness to bear himself emotionally is a good sign that he's got more in him, right? He's willing to like go to that well of like personal, difficult stuff.
Yeah, I think I'll put it this way. I hope that he continues to try acting, because as we see him really like get so raw with his own life, you know, that tells me like, God, there's a lot of actors who wish they could reach that level of rawness, right? So, you know, like, is there a future that he can apply that to other things? Absolutely. So, I'd like to see him try some other stuff too.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I'm giving my number already.
Oh, by all means.
Jumping ahead to the numbers. All right. I'm saying 8.
6.5 for me.
7.5. So.
7.5. Are you sure? All right.
Isn't that what I said previously?
You said 8.5. You said 8.5, and Alonso says 6.5, and I'm saying 8. So based on that, I don't know.
No, I said 8.5 for Defy Bloods.
You did say 8.5 for Defy Bloods. What are you saying? What are you saying now?
I'm saying 7.5 for King of Staten Island.
Okay, 7.5 plus.
Or number is a 7.
6.5. Are you sure? Plus,
oh wait, sorry. You're an 8, so 7.3.
8 divided by 3.
7.3.
7.3 says my phone. Not that I don't trust you. You're really good at math.
It is one of those 1999 rentals. Speaking of math, on all the platforms, so you know it's out there if you want to see it. Thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Linoleum Knife. Sorry, wrong one. That's my other one. Patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We do TV recaps. We are making our way through the first season of The Great on Hulu, and we'll be getting to Love Victor on Hulu pretty soon. Also, classics that our viewers pick for us to vote for us to watch every month, and lots of other fun stuff that only our Patreon subscribers get. So we do hope you'll check that out. Thanks for watching, everybody, and take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.